Cedric and I had been caught in a vicious cycle for 3 years. On the outside, he always kept me close, pretending to be madly in love with me, showering me with sweet words, calling me his wife. But behind my back, he treated me like an unnecessary burden, openly showing affection to his first love, Bianca, in front of me. I didn't cry or cause a scene. I calmly signed the divorce papers I'd been holding onto for months. This time, it was him who panicked, desperately searching for me everywhere. Then, at a banquet, I showed up on the arm of his sworn enemy. He stared at me with eyes red from anguish, like a dog begging for mercy. Chapter 1. Cedric White hosted a party at his villa in the suburbs, inviting many of his wealthy and influential friends. Yet, he didn't invite me, his legitimate wife. It was only thanks to one of his friends tricking me into attending that I learned the event was actually a homecoming celebration for his first love, Bianca. At the party, Cedric stood in the center, holding Bianca in his arms, while everyone enthusiastically encouraged them to toast together. They drank, and the atmosphere grew even more lively. People began calling her Mrs. White, with some even teasing. "Kiss, kiss," someone asked. "Cedric, when can we drink to your wedding? We've been looking forward to it for so long." "Yeah, Cedric, when are you going to ditch that other one and give Bianca a proper title? You don't have any real feelings for her anyway." Seeing that Cedric didn't object, their words became bolder. Did she think marrying into the family would make her Mrs. White? That position can only belong to Bianca. Bianca blushed, hiding shyly in Cedric's arms, playing the part of the innocent young girl. My sudden appearance seemed to freeze the atmosphere. Though I was his legitimate wife, standing there made me feel like an outsider. Bianca met my gaze across the crowd, her eyes filled with resentment. But the moment everyone noticed me, she immediately plastered on a warm smile, waving as if she were the hostess of the house. "Aisling, are you here to welcome me back too?" Cedric, who had been smiling moments before, immediately turned cold, narrowing his eyes and glaring at me. It was clear he was furious. Was he mad because I had ruined his little show? Before I could even react, he grabbed my hand and yanked me toward the door, not caring that my wrist was splitting open from the pressure. Walking in high heels was already difficult, and this almost made me stumble. "Who told you to come here?" I looked at the fresh blood seeping from my wrist, gritting my teeth and asking. "Cedric, aren't you afraid of the elder getting angry for bringing her back? Don't try to use the elder against me. Do you really think I'm afraid of him now? I'm not the same man I was a few years ago, someone who could be easily manipulated. No one can take her away from me anymore. If you want to live peacefully as Mrs. Cedric, you should mind your own business and stop trying to play games in front of me." Hearing this, my heart felt like it was being gnawed on by thousands of ants. I knew the answer already, but I couldn't help myself. I had to ask. "Cedric, over these 3 years of marriage, did you ever have even the smallest bit of affection for me?" Before he could answer, a sweet, bell-like voice interrupted. "Aisling, Cedric, are you two discussing something secretly?" I quickly hid my hand behind my back, trying to cover the blood and my pain. "Aisling, you don't look well. Do you need to rest?" Bianca asked, feigning concern. Cedric, eager to protect her from any hurtful words I might say, quickly replied. "She's fine, just pretending to be pitiful again." Saying this, he took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders, gently tapping her forehead. "You're dressed too lightly, be careful not to catch a cold." Behind this, I could feel the sting of his provocative gaze. The two of them, hand in hand, went back into the party, while I was escorted out by security he had called. Alone, I walked in the dark, empty night, and couldn't help but think back to a few days ago, on our 3rd anniversary. That day, I had booked a restaurant in advance, dressed up beautifully, and waited all night for him. But he never showed up. After calling him dozens of times with no answer, I eventually reached out to his assistant, only to hear, "Did you like the gift Mr. White sent today? The necklace you picked out 3 months ago and the roses you love, he took the afternoon off to deliver them to you. Just then, my phone lit up with a new notification, a video of a passionate kiss at the airport. My fingers trembled as I clicked on it. The comments were full of admiration. "They're such a perfect match, so romantic." I saw it in person. A guy waiting with a giant bouquet of roses for his goddess at the airport. So sweet. Where can you find a perfect boyfriend like that? Some even joked that they should get married right then and there to satisfy the onlookers' curiosity. The words blurred as tears poured down my face, staining the carefully outlined picture of that perfect scene. In comparison to my current situation, it was clear who was more important to him. I remembered the night before, when I had eagerly invited him to celebrate, only to be met with cold rejection and an unfeeling interrogation. Do you really think today is worth celebrating? The person I truly love is gone, and I was forced to marry someone I despise. This means nothing. I tried to force a smile, but no sound came out, only a deep, indescribable pain. If before Bianca returned, I still clung to a tiny hope that time might make him accept me, now I knew that no matter how hard I tried, I could never cross the deep chasm between us, the one that had Bianca's name firmly planted in the most important place in his heart. As long as she was there, he would never see the real me. Chapter 2. I met Cedric White in college. He was a campus celebrity. Not only was he academically outstanding and handsome, but he also came from a wealthy family. Watching him speak confidently on stage, he seemed to shine with an almost magnetic charm. He was truly captivating. Like most people, I developed a crush on him, but I wasn't the bold type. I never dared confess my feelings, so I kept them locked away in my heart. Occasionally, I would see him at school events, but I could only stand from a distance, too shy to approach. Even so, just catching a glimpse of him each day made me inexplicably happy, and my heart would race for hours afterward. People often said that someone like him, so aloof and unreachable, wouldn't have normal emotions, that it would be hard for anyone to move him. But then one day, someone captured him in a secluded corner of campus, fumbling with a gift he'd clearly prepared earlier. He was holding a shy girl in his arms, gently comforting her, running his fingers through her hair and even kissing her on the cheek. That was when I realized that, like everyone else, he too had a soft side and could be moved by someone. But that someone wasn't me. It wasn't anyone else, either. It was Bianca, the most beautiful girl in our department. Later, a video of them circulated on the school network for several days. For a long time after that, people continued to update each other with news about them. For someone like me, secretly in love and feeling inferior, it was truly tortuous. I forced myself to keep busy, doing anything I could to try to erase him from my life. It helped a little, but the effect was hardly significant. Eventually, word spread that Cedric and Bianca would get married after graduation. But unfortunately, they didn't end up together. Bianca went abroad and Cedric took over the family business. There were many rumors about why they broke up. Some said Bianca fell for someone else, while others suggested their different family backgrounds caused a rift. The next time I saw him, it was in a hotel suite. That day, my father and his wife Maureen, in pursuit of connections, planned to offer me to a well-known real estate tycoon. They drugged me, leaving me alone with several middle-aged men. I managed to escape, but not completely. In the chaos, I ended up having an encounter with a drugged Cedric. In his agitated state, he kept calling out, "Bianca, Bianca." I was in excruciating pain, too weak to resist, and afterward, he discarded me like a worthless rag. The next morning, I was woken by a rapid series of knocks at the door. A group of reporters burst in and started taking pictures. The incident quickly went viral, and under the mounting pressure, he married me. And I, in turn, used him as a way to escape the leech-like grip of my family. Chapter 3. Although this marriage began in such an undignified manner, I couldn't help but feel a certain satisfaction inside. At least my youthful wish had been realized. I loved him truly, deeply, with all my heart. I clumsily, painstakingly tried to learn every little thing about his preferences. For instance, he didn't like onions or garlic, preferred simple, light meals, his steak had to be medium rare, he was allergic to mangoes, and he frequented a specific Western restaurant. I also paid attention to the style of clothing he favored. Every day, I longed to speak to him, to share everything on my mind, but I was terrified he might find me bothersome. Sending him messages was an agonizing process, typing, deleting, editing again and again, making sure each word was perfect before I dared to send it. And even when the messages went unanswered, I never took it to heart. Whenever he so much as caught a cold, I would become anxious beyond measure, preparing the medicine he might need in advance. Even when I suffered from debilitating menstrual pain and fainted, only to wake up a full day later, I kept going silently. I would endure small surgeries, fevers, and colds alone, never once complaining about being tired or in pain. I knew he had a lot to handle, so I made sure to be strong, not wanting to be a burden. But to him, it seemed like my ailments were simply a ploy to gain sympathy. He saw all my actions as nothing more than an attempt to get money from him to fill the financial holes in my family. He even thought I was a shameless woman, willing to sacrifice myself and use any means necessary to achieve my goals. He never spoke kindly to me. When we first got married, life was surprisingly harmonious. There was a sense of mutual respect, like we were strangers living in the same house. But somewhere along the way, things started to change, and our relationship became as tense as it is now. Perhaps it all began when Maureen came to visit me. She said, "I never imagined you'd use the media to force him into marrying you. If he knew what you'd done, what do you think he would do to you? On your wedding day, didn't one of his exes come to see him? You never told Cedric about that, did you?" That night, when I returned home, I found him sitting alone in the living room, shrouded in darkness. As soon as I opened the door, he threw a vase at me. The floor was littered with shards of glass, and the beautiful furniture I'd painstakingly chosen now lay in ruins. Then he grabbed me by the neck, demanding to know if I was responsible for all of it. I felt a crushing sense of injustice and wanted to cry, but in the end, I could only stand there, silently enduring it all. He knew it wasn't me. But he still chose to accuse me, perhaps out of anger because I hadn't told him that Bianca had visited. It wasn't that I didn't want to. His family's elders had explicitly told me not to mention it. He had finally managed to calm things down, not wanting to stir up any more trouble. That was, until one day when I saw a woman who looked strikingly like Bianca with Cedric's father. That's when I understood why he was so paranoid. After all, a scandal between a brother and his stepsister would be a huge embarrassment for such a prestigious family, especially with Cedric being the company president. As I struggled to breathe, my body exhausted, I realized I was nothing more than a helpless outlet for his frustration. He needed a place to vent his anger, and I, unfortunately, was the perfect target. In the dead of night, I was thrown out of the mansion, marking the end of this farce. Without a phone, without a wallet, I stood alone in the wilderness all night. I thought that by marrying Cedric, I would have my own small world, where no one could bully me anymore. Looking back now, it feels so naive, so foolish. Because the person he truly wanted to build a warm family with was never me. The one he wanted to spend his life with was never me. Even though, in these 3 years, I never once regretted loving him. Loving someone means giving them all your heart, even if it means crying alone in the dead of night, only to wake up the next morning with renewed hope. But now, when I look back on it all, I realize I've lost myself. Living with Cedric was a continuous cycle of humiliation, hurt, and rejection. Gradually, I began to question my own worth, relying on medication to help me sleep and stave off depression, until I even developed tendencies toward self-harm. My body was covered in countless scars. And now, at this very moment, I've finally come to a realization. Cedric, I don't love you anymore. The 4 years of secret admiration and the 3 years of marriage. It's time to close this chapter. Chapter 4. I pulled the divorce agreement out of my bag and signed my name. Then, I went back to the villa to grab the luggage I had already packed and took a cab to the apartment I had rented before our marriage. Thank goodness I hadn't canceled the lease back then. The next day, I submitted a request to my company to be transferred abroad for business development. Now, all that was left was to get the divorce certificate. I called him again, but once more, there was no answer. Since I couldn't reach him, I decided to send the divorce agreement to his company. A week later, he finally called me back. He probably hadn't been home all week, or else he would have contacted me sooner. Isling, what are you up to this time? I don't have time for your games. He said. Have you finally learned your lesson? Not crawling into someone else's bed. Or does your father need another investment from me? You've planned it all out, pretending to love me. How fake. You've completely devalued the word love. To him, everything I did was for some ulterior motive. But this time, he was wrong. I just wanted a simple divorce. Mr. White, didn't you notice? I've already signed the divorce agreement, the one you gave me before. You've been holding on to that thing all this time. I didn't answer, continuing. If you have any doubts about the agreement, you can have your lawyer draft a new one and send it to me. And if you think I'm getting too much, we can discuss it. I don't need the car, but I won't give up the house or the shares. If there are no issues, we can go to the Civil Affairs office as soon as the cooling-off period is over. There was a long silence on the other end, so long that I thought he had hung up. Are you serious? He asked. Of course I'm serious. I'm giving you and Bianca space. No need to thank me. If you want to thank me, just give me more property as compensation. If you don't believe me, I can swear it. I promise this time I will definitely divorce Cedric. If I don't, Cedric? Before I could finish, he hurriedly interrupted. I could hear a hint of panic in his voice. Isling, think carefully without me, who will be your sugar daddy. Don't come crying and begging me later. The phone clicked off with a sharp beep. I looked up at the gray sky. Leaving him was no longer optional, it was a necessity. Chapter 5. When I got home from work, it was already late at night, and I received a call from Cedric. In the past, I might not hear from him for months, and if I wanted to know his schedule, I had to go through his assistant. Isling, you're really something, still out so late. I moved out a week ago. There was a long silence on the other end. If you're leaving now, don't bother coming back. Okay. When are you going to collect your things from here? Just throw them away. I don't want them. What, found a new backer already? I really underestimated your abilities. This man was truly bizarre. He was the one who initiated the divorce, and now that I agreed, he wouldn't stop talking. Cedric, if I remember correctly, you're the one who kept pushing for the divorce. Now that I'm agreeing, you're suddenly acting like this? Or were you just saying it for the sake of saying it? Didn't really want to divorce me? Or maybe now you've fallen in love with me? I wasn't sure which part of my words triggered him, but he started to get furious. You? Talk about love? I wouldn't even look at a stray cat or dog on the street, let alone you. Right, it could never be me. The wall I had built around my heart crumbled all over again. You're the one who proposed the divorce, don't go regretting it now. I silently adjusted my emotions and said with firm resolve. I'll never regret it. Since I had decided to sever ties with him completely, there was no turning back. With only a month left, I threw myself into work, staying late every night, with no time to dwell on anything else. Thanks to the doctor's medication and psychological counseling, my health had improved considerably. During this time, Cedric's assistant contacted me several times. He had stomach pains and needed medicine, he was drunk and needed me to pick him up, and he needed lunch ordered for him. I used to prepare everything for him, even though he always greeted me with a cold, indifferent face. But I didn't mind, I still did it because I enjoyed it. But now, none of this was my concern. I replied to the assistant coolly. If he's sick, he can go see a doctor. If he's drunk, send him to Bianca. As for lunch, ask him, don't come to me. I used to make bento for the person I loved, just like other girls did. Every time I saw him finish the meals I prepared, it gave me a sense of accomplishment. Then one day, I went to his office to drop off some documents and found the bento I worked so hard on thrown into the trash. After that, I never made bento again. During this time, I also saw news about him and Bianca on social media, popping up on my phone with eerie precision. I saw them post a picture of themselves holding hands with the caption, Reuniting is already a blessing. Having you for the rest of my life is enough. I even liked their post and sent my well wishes. But unfortunately, a moment later, the post was deleted. Chapter 6. Soon, my phone calendar reminded me of the appointment with Cedric. I had informed Cedric's secretary a few days in advance, just in case he forgot. After all, he had stood me up countless times before. Despite my repeated reminders, I still waited at the Civil Affairs office for 3 hours. Cedric, who always claimed to value time, was perpetually late when it came to me. The reason wasn't hard to guess. I was never important in his world, always an optional presence. As the staff were about to close, I anxiously pleaded with them to wait a little longer. He finally arrived, standing there silently, his polished shoes gleaming but his attitude cold. Grinding his teeth, he said slowly, "What's the rush? I wouldn't miss such a good opportunity to cut ties with you." Looking at his usually neat but now slightly disheveled clothes, and the faint hickeys on his neck, I felt an indescribable emotion. This should have been done long ago. This way, I wouldn't have to change my flight last minute, making myself flustered. The divorce procedures were completed quickly. Watching the stamp being pressed down, I felt a bit of sadness. 7 years of my brightest youth, the story of my relationship with Cedric, had finally come to an end. From this moment on, I could start anew. Everyone should pursue a better life, not be trapped in a small circle. Life shouldn't revolve around emotions alone. Such a lifestyle makes one narrow and insignificant. It took me 7 years to understand this truth. As I walked out of the Civil Affairs office, it was already evening. From a distance, I saw an elegant figure standing by his car, seemingly showing off to me. No wonder he kept me waiting so long. I casually sent a text message. Cedric, who followed closely behind, sneered. "Wait and see when you'll come crawling back, begging for forgiveness." I shook my head and responded calmly, that would never happen. I even generously congratulated him on finally finding his true love after years of wandering. His furious expression made me laugh. Suddenly, a strikingly handsome man approached. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit with a refined face, holding a large bouquet of roses, he looked like a movie star walking towards me. He pulled me into his arms, congratulating me on escaping my predicament and welcoming a new life. It almost felt like we should set off fireworks to celebrate this joy. This gentleman was my good friend and boss, also Cedric's lifelong rival, Thaddeus. Cedric's face darkened. "So he's your backer? You really can pick anyone." Hey, let me be fair here. If it weren't for that, how could our little darling have fallen for you, this piece of trash? I really wonder how much water was in her brain back then. Such a handsome man right in front of her, and she didn't even flinch. 7 years of infatuation with such an annoying guy. I should suggest you both get your eyes checked. As he spoke, I had to cover his mouth to prevent him from saying anything more shocking, and I certainly didn't want Cedric to know about my little crush on him in college. Using his height advantage, Thaddeus dodged my hand and loudly declared, "I want everyone to know, I've liked Aisling for 7 years. From now on, she's officially mine." Then he quickly stole a kiss on my cheek, flaunting it to Cedric. Cedric's face turned red and white, glaring at Thaddeus like a predator ready to pounce. As we left, he shoved me and muttered, "What a disgrace." After they disappeared from my sight, I turned to Thaddeus and joked, "With such acting talent, it's a waste you're not a movie star." He dodged playfully. "Hey, didn't I fool you with that thick layer of powder? That kiss just turned my mouth white." I laughed and chased after him, tapping his head. "You little rascal! Stop fooling around, darling. If we don't hurry, we'll miss our flight." Chapter 7. Thaddeus and I met in an orphanage. I was the child my father left behind from his affairs, and my mother passed away when I was 4. When I was 6, I met Thaddeus, a crying child abandoned at the orphanage's door. I took Thaddeus to the director, and from then on, he became my little shadow. If someone bullied him, I stood up for him. If he got sick, I took care of him. But he only stayed at the orphanage for 3 years before his family found him and took him back. However, we kept in touch afterward. After graduation, we joined the same company, and he even became my boss. I never expected him to accompany me abroad for a new project. But with him by my side, I felt more secure. Although he seemed unreliable and loved to joke around, everyone could see he was very capable. Over the course of a year, Thaddeus and I traveled the world, negotiating business deals. I gained a lot of experience and saw the world's prosperity and beauty. I also realized that life without love could still be wonderful. He helped me rise from an ordinary employee to a general manager. Though the process was tough, I felt incredibly fulfilled, growing more confident and excellent through work recognition. Thaddeus often said it was his greatest achievement to transform me from a lovesick girl into a career woman, using this as an excuse to frequently come to my house for meals, claiming I should reward him. After dinner, he would rest his head on my shoulder, mumbling, "Iseling, there's a banquet next week, can you accompany me?" "Sure." Chapter 8. Thaddeus dressed me up stunningly, and as soon as I stepped into the banquet hall, all eyes were on me. I was no longer the shy Iseling. I could handle various situations at the banquet with ease. Scanning the room, I saw Cedric not far away. In my mind, I had rehearsed countless times what it would be like to see him again, imagining he had overcome all obstacles to marry Bianca, living happily ever after. But the Cedric in reality was very different from my memories. I remembered no one ever dared to force him to drink, yet now he was constantly drinking. His once stern face now always wore a forced smile. When he saw me, he was first shocked, then showed a hint of excitement, and finally, his eyes reddened slightly, staring at me intently. To me, he seemed like a stranger. Thaddeus introduced me to everyone, helping me establish connections in this circle. After a round of socializing, even though I usually had a good tolerance for alcohol, I felt a bit dizzy and found an excuse to slip out to the garden for some fresh air. Unexpectedly, I stumbled upon a scene I shouldn't have seen. A middle-aged man roughly handling a woman, whose voice sounded familiar. Feeling extremely awkward, I quietly left. But Cedric, who had followed me, suddenly covered my mouth and dragged me away. No matter how I struggled, it was useless. He finally picked me up and whispered threateningly, "Behave, or I'll kiss you. Cedric, we're already divorced, stay away from me, or I'll accuse you of harassment." He turned a corner and brought me into a room. As soon as I jumped off the bed to escape, Cedric grabbed my wrist and pinned me against the door, one hand around my waist, his voice pleading, "Iseling, do you really not want me anymore? I thought you would come back. I waited for you for a whole year. Only to realize everything was gone. It was my fault for being so cold to you before. Give me a chance to make it up, please." I was speechless. Every time I did something, you accused me of having ulterior motives, making me feel like I could never please you. On our wedding day, Bianca did come to see you, but the elder stopped the messenger. Every time I tried to get close to you, I was rejected, my bento was thrown away, gifts were despised for their quality, even my care when you were sick was called insincere. When I gave my all, I was met with constant disdain. Cedric, do you still want to hear more? I'm sorry, I didn't realize how excessive I was. I was just used to that way of interacting. It didn't mean I felt that way inside. Since we separated, I realized how precious what I had was. Iseling, can we give each other another chance? Used to it. It was your habits that nearly destroyed my will to live. Your so-called normalcy almost ruined me. Seeing I didn't immediately retort, he quickly explained. I know you're concerned about Bianca and me, she's just a half-sister, there's no possibility of that kind of relationship. I mocked. A relationship where you can kiss and even share a bed. Since our divorce, I haven't contacted her. Before, it was just to test if you cared about me, but it backfired and made you misunderstand. Who knew it would lead to our breakup? Listening to this absurd explanation, I even doubted if the person in front of me was the Cedric I knew. Let go, we've both changed. No, you're mine. Before he could do anything more outrageous, I slapped him hard. "Look at what you've done," I said, almost losing control. "Every time I think about it, it's like a knife stabbing my heart. I don't love you anymore, but now you're the one who won't let go." Just then, Thaddeus, who had rushed over after hearing the commotion, pinned Cedric to the ground and gave him a good beating. It wasn't until Cedric lay on the ground clutching his chest in pain that I stopped the furious Thaddeus. Later, I learned that Cedric had betrayed his family's wishes to marry Bianca. Because he defied his elders, he lost his original status and resources. This relationship didn't receive the blessing it deserved and instead fell into turmoil. Bianca turned around and married another wealthy man. They had been together since they went abroad. She returned to Cedric just to make that wealthy man jealous. After realizing everything, Cedric and Bianca completely broke up, and he thought of coming back to me, his former wife. He thought I was just angry and believed I would always silently support him, so he hurt me recklessly. Unfortunately, when he lowered his stance to find me, I had already deleted all his contact information and left the country. This threw him into a panic. He naively thought it was because of love, believing he had developed genuine feelings for me. But in reality, I believed he was just used to having me around, used to my flattery and concessions. It was that simple. I felt sorry for myself, having ruined myself for such a person. Fortunately, I woke up in time, learning to cherish and take care of myself again with Thaddeus's help. Life is not easy, but I'm willing to fight for myself. Chapter 9. Cedric's perspective. Aisling and I are divorced, but I believe she will soon beg to come back to me. I particularly enjoyed seeing her humiliated in front of me. It gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. However, this time, it feels like she really won't come back. I know she loves me, that has never changed. Even when she tries to maintain composure in front of me, her deep affection always inadvertently shows, impossible to hide. When we first got married, our life was relatively harmonious. But then, her stepmother and father constantly caused trouble, always speaking ill of her in front of me. Gradually brainwashed by them, I began to think Aisling approached me with ulterior motives, not out of genuine love. Every time she used love as an excuse to ask for money, it deepened my negative view. Over time, my attitude towards her became increasingly harsh, often verbally abusing her. Seeing her panic-stricken expression gave me a twisted sense of security. I deliberately distanced myself from her, cancelled our plans, and got close to Bianca, letting people upload those videos online without deleting them. Slowly, I noticed she became colder towards me. That's when I started to feel something was wrong, a faint pain in my heart. Just as Bianca returned, I decided to use one more trick to make her jealous. I hosted a welcome party for Bianca at the villa, specifically inviting Aisling. Everyone at the party spoke rudely to her, clearly making her uncomfortable, showing she still cared about me. I was secretly pleased but maintained a stern attitude, questioning why she was there. She first worried about the elders' reaction rather than acting like a wife, which infuriated me. Afterward, I deliberately showed concern for Bianca. Her face turned even paler, but I felt triumphant, though I didn't show it, and had security escort her out. Unexpectedly, after returning from a business trip, I received the divorce agreement from Aisling. Rushing home to find her, I discovered she had already left. Checking the bedroom, I found everything except her usual suitcase. She had moved out a week ago. I thought she was just trying to get my attention, as she had never truly left before. But when I walked out of the Civil Affairs office with the divorce certificate, I realized this time it might really be over. Later, learning about Thaddeus's existence, a wave of unease washed over me. Accidentally flipping through the diary she left behind, I discovered she had silently loved me for 7 years. Though I despised such behavior, I was also secretly pleased, more convinced it was just a ploy to make me notice her. To make her regret, I announced my intention to marry Bianca, eagerly awaiting the day she would come back begging. But a year passed and she never appeared. Only then did I slowly realize, maybe I had truly lost her. How could someone who once loved me so deeply let go so decisively? Women ultimately are untrustworthy. By chance, at a gathering, I saw the drastically changed Aisling and Thaddeus beside her, envied by all the men. Seeing this happy couple made me uncomfortable. Jealousy surged. Aisling should belong to me. So I tried to make amends and pursue her again. But no matter what I said or did, she remained indifferent, even disgusted. I remembered how she used to get excited and cling to me with just a little kindness or intimacy. Thinking of this made me secretly proud, though I kept a cold facade, mocking her as shameless. Suddenly touching the scars on her hands, I was shocked, tears welling up. These were all because of me. At that moment, I realized how excessive and terrible my past actions were. I was a monster. I had continuously hurt her without ever considering the gravity of my actions. Now, no one could teach me how to love someone. Growing up in a broken family, witnessing my father's countless affairs, my mother's tragic death in a car accident, enduring countless beatings and abuse, growing up amidst my father's intimate scenes with different women. All this twisted me. A monster living inside me often emerged. I always planned to make my so-called father pay for his sins by taking away the women he treated as playthings. Fortunately, a loving grandfather intervened in time, saving me from becoming something worse. In college, I met my half-sister Bianca. Initially, upon learning her true identity, I planned to use her to get back at my family. Imagining my father's furious reaction was amusing. But the elder quickly noticed and sent her abroad, arranging my marriage with Aisling, leading to the end of this beautiful relationship. Since then, no one has understood how to give me warmth and support better than her. Despite my repeated pleas for forgiveness and self-destructive attempts to seek attention, I couldn't move my former lover. Browsing news about Aisling became a daily routine, like hearing about her building her business empire and going international, or about her and her current husband planning their wedding and expecting a child. Everything was going so smoothly and beautifully, while I seemed forever stuck in the days when we were together. On October 30th, 2030, a shocking news headline swept the internet. Cedric, heir to the Cedric Group, found dead at home, aged 31.